Welcome to the Pre Nup, the wedding obsessed podcast designed to help you plan your dream day. I'm your host, Adriana, and each week I'm joined by the industry's top professionals, celebs, influencers, and friends who are sharing their best tips, advice, and mistakes they've made so you don't have to. The Pre Nup is a Love Stories TV podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Olive & June. I used to be a religious nail salon girl, but as a planner in wedding season, it's just so hard to keep up with salon visits, and I know my busy brides can relate. Going to the salon is not only such a huge expense, but such a big time commitment. I've heard so many brides talk about the Olive & June Mani system, so I finally decided to give it a try, and I'm obsessed. I thought it was too good to be true, but since trying, I totally get the hype. If you're scared about doing your own nails, trust me, if I can do it, literally anyone can. Olive & June provides everything you need for salon-quality manicures in one box with salon-grade tools that are designed for DIY. You also get to choose 6 polishes, which is so fun. We love to spice things up and change our color between manis. My favorites right now are Espresso-Tini, which is that really gorgeous trendy brown you're seeing all over Instagram, and Sugar Coat, which is a shimmery neutral that looks good really for any occasion and in any season. Olive & June has thought of everything you need to create gorgeous salon-quality manicures at home that last 7 full days without chipping. Compared to your salon where you're spending anywhere from $30 to $60 plus for your mani, plus tip. With Olive & June, you're averaging about $2 per mani. Break up with your salon and visit oliveandjune.com to try the easiest, most cost-effective way to get salon-quality nails at home.
In the throes of wedding planning, there is so much to get done. Not enough time to do it. Budget is being exceeded. Family members are disappointed. Hair is falling out. Sound familiar? I hope not, but if it does, we are going to help you out tremendously today because we have the fabulous Caroline Gaudy, coach of Blissfully Wed, which provides bespoke support to couples in the thick of wedding planning, aiming to manage their stress and thrive through the wedding process so that they can enjoy the most beautiful celebration of their union. Caroline, welcome to the Pre Nup.
Thank you, Adriana. Such a pleasure to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. I met you about a month ago, and we were at this really great event, and I just remember seeing you, and you're so beautiful. And once I started talking to you, I was like, she's so warm and she's so poised. I wonder what she does, because we had only really made pleasantries, but we got to talking a little bit more about what you do. And I was so fascinated by it because it's something that I have not experienced anywhere else in the wedding sphere. So in your words, tell our listeners, our viewers, what it is that you do with Blissfully Wed.
Yes, the best answer I could give you is actually come back to how I got there.
Yes.
Because my husband, JL, is a wedding photographer. He's been a wedding photographer for over 15 years.
A fabulous one at that. He's very coveted.
I have to owe to him the fact that he's always very perceptive of, I would say, opportunities, but also challenges. And he's been telling me for a decade, I wish you could come join my business and help my couple navigate their challenges. You're so great at this.
Yes.
And that was way before I even knew I was a coach, you know. And so that's I think always been my tendency, my nature.
Yes.
To be helping, like to be trying to find a way to help people feel more at ease, feel more calm.
Yes.
Better manage the challenges that come their way. And so that's what I do now, supporting couples with Bliss. Is how do you navigate all of the ebbs and flows and challenges and tension and all of these emotions that come up in the wedding planning in a way that's come with calm and ease.
Which is so important when we're planning a wedding because there's all of these different elements that are getting thrown at us, and it feels almost like we're trying to fight through a windstorm in a way. There's all of these almost debris is what I like to liken it to. Yeah. And how do you get through it while you're protecting your own peace and your own sanity, but also holding on to your partner and making sure that you guys are getting through this really together, because that's what it's about at the end. So I'm a huge proponent of any kind of premarital counseling, therapy, coaching. But sometimes I find if you're going to traditional therapy, it can feel a little bit heavy, if you will. And not always. This is not to knock therapists. Therapy is great. But specifically for weddings and people planning their wedding, that's really your focus,
Yes.
which I love because you see so many different things going on, but you're really dealing with the same path in life for your clientele. So if you could you share maybe some of the common trials of engaged couples? What are you finding that's really weighing heavy on them?
I love that question because it's actually not that simple.
Okay.
I feel that on the surface, it's always around money, around other people. Let's
Yes.
put that, because there are in-laws and parents and pressure from other people.
Of course.
And I would say a lack of self-confidence. But to me, if we start looking at these challenges at a deeper level,
Mhm.
they're just, they appear as the symptoms, but they're not the root cause.
Yeah.
And to me, at a deeper level, it's not understanding ourselves, human psychology, and not knowing how to communicate properly, that really then create these problems around money, around in-laws and other people, and feeling lacking confidence.
Sure.
But the root cause of it all is our own minds. And I don't think, if there's one thing that I wish we could learn at school from a youngest age, is understanding how our mind function, how we function,
Yes.
to better then comprehend and appreciate how much managing your stress is going to be essential
Yeah.
to having a beautiful experience as you prepare for your wedding, in your marriage, and in all areas of life.
Yes.
And I think, back to what you were saying around premarital counseling, on all sorts and form, there's still this idea that you go to a couple therapist when you have a problem, right?
Right.
And it's kind of negative. So why would you go to a couple therapist when you're, getting married, or going to a coach, or going to counseling? And I love to go to professional athletes because it's a lot more in the open for them than it is for other areas of life.
Yes.
But I always think about or refer to Serena Williams or Roger Federer, right? Like two tennis massive legends.
Sure.
And we all can agree that there is no way they would be the superstar that they are today if they were seeking help in their craft, and in a lot of areas in their life, probably.
Yeah.
Only when they were having trouble in their
Sure,
games, right? Like,
sure.
so we expect that they have nutritional coaches and physical therapists and probably a mindset coach, and obviously a tennis coach to support.
Because if you want to be the best of the best, you gotta, for sure.
Exactly. So it's the same for any area of life that matters to you, right? Like, whether it's your life, your career, you want to be a parent, or be a better parent, or whatever it is.
Yes.
You invest in that. And so I think it's extremely important when you start, in any relationship, but if it's so important to you, building amazing foundation in the wedding process, and then obviously you carry that on in your marriage and your life, lifelong together, then that sets you up for success.
That's really interesting, because you said it's not really about the money or the familial pressure or any of these things.
No.
When you're going through the wedding planning process, it feels like it is, but it's very interesting that you likened it to a professional athlete, because you need to kind of practice those skills during the wedding planning process so that your marriage can be stronger. So I think that wedding planning and like the quote unquote trivial issues associated with it, like, oh, well, we're not agreeing on the design or this and that, how you navigate those issues and how you solve those problems, you're building a foundation how you can solve bigger problems. So as things come along, like you and JL have a beautiful daughter, and that probably seems like the most important thing compared to even when you were just a couple yourself, if you look back to the time when it was just the two of you, you're like, oh, we thought that was something. That was nothing compared to this.
Definitely.
But now you have the tools because you worked through them in a healthy way to navigate issues that maybe could be a little bit bigger or more important.
Yeah. Yes. And you know, I as you're saying this, there is an analogy I've used in the past, which is if you were to just lift like show me your arm, and I would take a handful of salt, sea salt, and I would sprinkle it through your arm right now.
Yeah,
it would be kind of a non-event, right? Like,
yeah.
But then if you had an open wound throughout your arm, and I would sprinkle salt on it, that would be pretty brutal.
I would not care for that, Caroline. I'm not going to lie to you.
Exactly. Well, our perception of stress is the same.
Yeah.
The salt is what we consider stressors. Money, my mother-in-law, my, like whatever it is. But the truth is, it only hurts because there's something in you that you haven't fully healed or even fully integrated or taken full awareness of.
Yes.
And so that's how I also help my client realize that, yes, we can talk about mother-in-law or our bridesmaid getting difficult, whatever it is, or not being supportive, but the truth is it come back to something that we haven't fully solved.
So you're doing the deep work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so I
yes.
want to hear more about that because I already can tell. I mean, from the moment I met you, I was like, I could tell this woman my whole life story and I would never bore you with that. I wouldn't be so rude. But you have this very warm, loving, very open energy. And you do have a very interesting sense of putting me at ease. So I already feel just so comfortable. So I'm sure your clients are very grateful for that as well. But even so, even the person that you're most comfortable with, even a fiance, sometimes those really, really deep, dark issues, they're hard to come to surface. So how do you as a coach draw those out? How do you get people to really bring them up and work on them?
The selection process happens naturally. Like
Yes.
people who are willing to dig deeper seek a coach. If you're coming with the perspective that you're perfect, nothing is wrong with you, and you just want tools to know how to talk to this person and deal with that, you're typically not going to go to a coach. Right?
Do you ever deal with maybe one part of the couple who is like, yeah, I'm really open to coaching, and the other one's like, no, I'm simply perfect?
Well, that's the thing. And that's a beautiful myth that I absolutely want to bust today. This idea that you have to do therapy, counseling, or coaching together for it to work.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, it's marvelous when the two are invested in, working through whatever challenges they're facing.
Yes.
Becoming a better version of themselves, etc. And it took me, actually, I didn't believe it at first, but someone told me, it doesn't take two to tango. You can be just going through any sort of work on yourself by yourself. Your partner will mirror that.
Yeah. Someone's got to take the lead.
Exactly. So that's the thing. Like if I have clients who come by themselves, right? And they just work. And I've had actually in a completely different capacity, a client who came and we worked on mostly her vision, and her first reaction was like, oh my God, I love, the exercise we did together. I feel like I have so much clarity on my vision. How do I get my spouse on board now? Like, do I have to do the exercise with him too? What if he doesn't want to? I was like, you can try, right? You can ask, would he be interested in doing that work himself, this exercise maybe with you?
Yeah.
Or you can just be that version of yourself. You can just start bringing that vision to life and watch. It'll join. And she was like, I doubt it. And a few weeks later, it didn't take very long. A few weeks later, it's like, I'm blown away.
Wow.
Like it's just our dynamic, our relationship is evolving, and he hasn't done any of the work. Right?
Yes.
So that works. You can do it by yourself, especially if you have a partner who's maybe not as interested or invested in that type of work, or often as people feel more reluctant to share.
Yeah.
And you can still have a beautiful impact on your relationship.
So that is so interesting because from a young age, we're always told you treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mhm.
And I think that does get ingrained into us, so much so that we match people's energy. If someone passes us on the street and gives us a smile, we smile back. If someone gives us a nasty look, we're kind of
Mhm.
a little bit
Mhm.
defensive. And that can happen in even the closest of relationships. My husband's bad day is Tuesday. He gets a Tuesday slump. And for a while in the early years, I would be like, what's ass? Like I was all annoyed by him. I was like, gosh, he's so rude. And then the next day things would be fine and we were fine. But it took me a while to understand that, but I would always match his energy. So then Tuesday became my bad day too. So now I know that's his bad day and I just go about my business and then, we recap on, recoup on Wednesday. But yeah, it is interesting. And on a more of a positive note, if you start to embody some of those characteristics that you want to see, not only in yourself, but in your partner, like you have to live it to do it. There's only so much, like the difference, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert and I am not, but between therapy and coaching is the understanding versus the tools. So the knowledge is only so good until you put it into practice, right?
Yes.
So what are some tools that you could offer to someone? And I know everyone's issues, or not even issues, but what everyone is dealing with in their life and what they want to improve or enhance, they're different from each other. But if you're looking to just build a strong bond, a strong foundation, and maybe there's some communication issues. David and I talk about communication a lot when it's me and him. But what are some tools that either a solo person or a couple can do with each other to enhance that communication?
It's an excellent question. I feel there's so many layers to what you're saying and so many ideas are coming to mind. But I think as it relates to what you were just saying, the tool that came to mind immediately for me is a tool that I call the People Star. It's a tool I borrowed from a different exercise and I kind of made it my own.
Okay.
And you basically draw a 5 branch star and you write your name in the middle and you assess what are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it can be someone that you know, and it can be if you're a big fan of a podcast and someone listened to you a lot, you might be there. You might not know them, but they know you. Right?
Yeah, so maybe you're spending all your time with me. Unlucky you.
And so really assess, who am I spending most of my time with?
Yes.
In these 5, and write down these names. And from there, looking at so if you were to give them a rating, 1 being when you spend time with them, you are drained, you go and you leave, you're feeling very pessimistic, and it's not the energy to like bring you on. And then 10 is like you're top of the world, you feel energized when you speak with these people, they support you, and just giving them a rate. That's based on the exercise of saying you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Although there's a lot of nuances to that in the research, but at least getting a sense of the average. So you can average out the rates and see where you're at. And first assess, is this where I want to be? I mean, and if it is, good for you. Continue to invest in that circle of yours.
Sure.
If it's not, then it's time for you to assess, who do I need to get off of my star? And that doesn't mean just remove them from your life, right? But how do you bring someone else who you're going to spend more time with so that this person is no longer part of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And that to me has always been very revealing. And actually last summer, I was reading the original exercise from a book called The Source. And I started to write the names and I was like, oh my God, like I'm spending so much time with my clients that the 5th person on this exercise for me is a client and a client going through something really, really hard. And while I don't feel drained by my sessions, I was like, there's something wrong there, Caroline.
Right.
And I didn't do anything about this. I just set the intention of like, I really need to lift my average and also make sure that a client is not the fifth person I spend the most time with.
Of course. Yeah.
Within a few months, people started to show up in my life, incredible people that I shouldn't have access to at this point, giving me their time, their knowledge, their support. And I was like, wow. So just that, and this is relating to what you're saying with your husband, we tend to, first of all, we emanate energy, right? Like every cell of our body emanates an energy. We are always positive or negative, and that's what we perceive, right? Like sometimes I'm sure you don't need your husband to talk. You're like, ooh, not a good day or not a right time, right? And that's this energy that you're perceiving. The beauty of, first of all, knowing who brings you energy, who might drain you of energy is really helpful, especially in the wedding, in your wedding planning journey. You want to make sure that your vendors, make you energized and feel great, etc.
It's so true. Yes.
But also then slowly starting to learn to not give too much importance to the energy of people and be kind of your own energy there and be like, I want to be a 9 out of 10 most of the time.
Yeah.
So like, who do I need to be around? What do I need to read? Who do I need to listen to? And so that when the bad energy comes in, instead of you, for example, getting out on Tuesday and just being out of here, you're like, you can be there.
Yes.
And you can be right there, but you're not going to let that energy, and you're going to emanate that positive energy, which might actually help him feel better or less slow on a Tuesday, right? So that's a simple tool that I do with an exercise I do with my clients, and then we work through how do you elevate your average if you're not in the place you want to be.
That's so interesting because you brought up earlier in the conversation the idea of a self-confidence, and I was like, well, what does that really have to do with it? But it does. When you put it that way, it's so important to be able to be in control of yourself, especially, as you said, when you're going through this period that can be so very stressful. And the sum of the people that you hang out with or are around, it is interesting, especially when it comes to vendors. And it's not something that I planned on talking about, but it is so important. And we bring it up a lot because people always ask, how should I know what the right wedding planner is, or, my photographer? And I always say it's not enough to know and love someone's work. You really have to drive with them because, especially a wedding planner, a photographer like JL, you're with them the whole day. A wedding planner, you're with them more than the whole day. You're spending a ton of time with them. I mean, no doubt about it, they're going to be in that on one of the pegs of the star for sure. So if you hate them, or if they are draining you or drowning you, like, they are not the right person. And I guess it's hard to really, in a short time frame, know that and understand that. But how can you better your compass, let's say, your way of understanding who those good people are going to be for you and who is going to give you energy? Yeah. Because I think sometimes I struggle with that off the bat. Maybe I say, like, oh, well, I'm going to give this person a chance because maybe it wasn't a great experience for them the first time, and then I end up drained and it's just not a personality fit.
Yes. What you're talking about is what I refer to, like, trusting your intuition. Like, it has to be with, again, this gut feeling, right?
Yes.
The best way to be able, like, first of all, when you met your spouse, you gave yourself a few dates, I'm assuming, etc. And it's the same for anything. I'm not suggesting, like, go talk to your potential wedding planner many times, right?
Yeah.
But you knew the first time you wanted a second one, right?
Yes.
Or let's go on a second date. So I think trusting that intuition, like, did I just spend a good time? Even if it's 5 minutes on the phone, or like, did it feel fun? Did it feel right? Did it feel aligned to me? Was there, if you're very introverted and you actually seek people who are more extroverted because they're going to support you in ways that you can't, then you'll know, like you'll naturally fit with people who are more extroverted. Or if you are introverted and prefer people who are more like you know that about yourself. And these are some of the elements that you want to keep in mind as you interview other, talk to other vendors and decide on who to go with.
Yeah.
At the core of it all, and it's I always go back to it myself, is you want to be as calm as the state called homeostasis as possible. And the challenge is we are probably the most stressed generation of history.
Yeah.
And so when we're stressed, essentially we are in a survival mode, the fight or flight, the famous fight or flight. And basically when you're stressed and you're in that state, you bring the worst version of yourself. And so, literally physiologically what happens for us in our body is, among other things, you start having tunnel vision, like selective hearing, right? So you start, and because our brain has a tendency of very strong negative bias, you're going to start noticing what's wrong with everything. You're not going to see the potential, and you're going to be more disconnected to your gut feeling, your intuition, however you want to call it.
Yes.
So I think, as at the root of every form of happy life is a good stress management system. And because from that place, then you'll be relaxed. You'll be more open to look and listen to what the vendor is saying, what even your future in-laws are saying. Like you're connect with things a lot more easily. And then it's a matter of trusting, because I know so many, friends, clients. I have this client who decided on taking a job. And from the first interview, she was telling me, oh, it feels like it's a very stressed environment. I was like, is this what you want? And she's like, no, but there's all of these other things that would be great. And I was like, okay, you need to decide what's fundamentally important to you. And she was like, it's definitely not the right environment, but it's going to help me get to the next level. So she took it. And after a few weeks, she was like, oh, I knew it. Why didn't I listen? Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like listening.
Yes.
You typically know. It's just trusting yourself.
Yes. You can train your gut to make those good decisions. Because I think sometimes people make gut decisions and I'm like, maybe your gut needs a readjustment. Because that was not the one. But no, I think you're right. I think when people make a quote unquote gut decision and it is something that feels inherently wrong, it's more about, okay, what's going on in your life that you are defaulting to that as a good decision and doing that deep work. So really going in on it from there. And I think when you get to the core of it, you can realize that wasn't a gut decision. That was something else making that decision, not your gut.
Yes.
And I think people might wonder, why is this so important in wedding planning, especially at the beginning stages? But I would argue that this is such a wedding planning, potentially exciting time in your life. It's something that you're going to look back on for a long time.
Yes.
And everything that you do is for the lead up to this union. And you really want to get that started on a good foot.
Yes.
And if you are constantly burdened with stress and anxiety and upset, that is going to seep into your relationship, as you said, that energy. And that it's just a bad place to be. You really want to make sure that you are leveled and that's not to say things aren't going to go wrong. Things can go wrong, but it's about how you handle them, right?
Yes.
So let's chit chat a little bit about the management of stress. That's a tough one, isn't it? Especially when we're dealing with all of these things coming at us and trying to juggle so many things and trying to remember what's important. So how do you recommend that your clients attempt to really manage that stress?
There's a lot of simple yet effective and sometimes actually very fun and exciting ways to lower your stress and keep control of your stress.
Okay.
The fundamental one, I call it the RED, R-E-D. R for rest, E for exercise, D for diet.
Okay.
Right? I can attest myself. I was sleep deprived for 2.5 years when our daughter was born. I was a bad sleeper.
Oh.
And I I became the worst version of myself, and JL, please don't chuckle in the back. Because
JL's like, no, you're perfect, honey.
But the moment I really understood how important sleep was in my overall quality of life, and therefore, my surrounding, in my impact, at least in my surrounding, it was really transformative. I track my sleep every night.
How do you track it?
I use a ring. I bought myself an Aura ring last year, and I do it every single day.
Do you love the Aura ring? I hear such good things about it.
I absolutely love it. But there's a lot of like free tools, free apps, free ways to just track your sleep. But ultimately, I'm more of a geek when it comes to that. But just having good quality and quantity sleep. Mm-hmm. If only that, then you're good.
Yeah.
If you're in a place where you're sleeping less than 7 hours, or you wake up and you don't feel that rested, or you feel foggy, then find ways to add more rest. So go to bed earlier, add a nap if you can, especially in the weekend, and take pauses in the middle of the day. Typically we find ourselves in between 2 meetings, and there's like 5 minutes. It's too short to write an email, too short to do anything. So we just grab our phone and we just scroll. One of the tool I teach to my client is a 1-minute meditation.
Okay.
Because often we think, okay, well, we need 20 minutes. We need to be in quiet. We need to be in a place where we can close our eyes to meditate. And there's nothing further from the truth, right?
Yeah.
So just we're practicing together on our session a 1-minute meditation.
Interesting.
And if you can implement things like this throughout your day, that contributes to rest and to really helping manage stress. Then obviously there's exercise, moving intentionally, as I say, because not everyone is for like going to the gym but breaking a sweat actually really helps release the stress hormones. So anything that helps in that land. And so that's where we can get a little cheeky here, but any horizontal activity that can be done as a couple in the bedroom contributes actually triple points, because you get your sweat.
Sure.
You are not distracted, so you're actually very mindful. And you get a lot of benefits from that, for
Absolutely.
sure. And then diet, and we were talking about gut feeling.
Of course.
And I think very few people know that we have a gut-brain connection.
Yeah.
But most people feel that most of the connection goes from the brain to the gut. And truth is, I believe it's about 80% of the communication goes from your gut to your brain.
Wow.
So having a healthy diet is not just helpful for your own health, it's just for your mind, for your mental health is extremely important. And there is also research that shows that taking omega-3 lower cortisol, which is one of the stress hormones, by almost 20%. So taking supplements in omega-3 is, again, a very simple thing. It's a few seconds a day, but helps. And then Dr. Gottman did some research about ways to lower stress. And he found that a 20-second hug or a 6-minute kiss with someone you love lower significantly your stress hormones. So,
6 minutes?
Yes. 6 seconds. 6 seconds. Sorry.
Oh my God.
Oh, 6 minutes would be long.
6 minutes. I'm sorry, sweetie.
No, 20-second hug and 6-second kiss. Yes.
Okay, that I can
do. Yes. Well, 20-second hug and 6-second kiss can be awkwardly long.
Yeah.
That's what you want, and it really help build resilience and lower stress. So that's a fun way to lower your stress. And so I shared that study with JL a while back, and he's amazing. And every single day coming to me, I was like, it's time for a 20-second hug.
That's so sweet.
Yes.
That's an easy bonding moment too. And you brought up that. You brought up, the horizontal.
Yes.
The hanky-panky, if you will. Sorry, Dad. Cover your eyes and ears. But I want to get into the topic of intimacy, because that's something that you also help your clients with. And I think especially on the precipice of marriage, it's so important to put at the forefront, but it goes by the wayside so much because people are busy. Like you said, in between a meetings, well, I only have 5 minutes. I don't have time for that. Like people lose priority. So how can we really foster intimacy, not only on a sexual level, but also on, just a relationship level?
Yeah. The simple thing is ultimately you were two happy lovebirds, before getting engaged.
Yes.
And you want to continue to be these persons, except you've added a project on top of it. Right?
Yeah.
So there's that. Obviously, having amazing vendors, because what you want to do is really trust and delegate as much as possible to those experts.
Oh, delegate. Yes.
They've got married 300 times in the past 10 years. They know the drill, right? Like, so just really trusting that they know what they're doing. And especially if you've made the right decision, trusting your guts about your vendors, feeling comfortable with them, then they know.
Right. And then you have more time to focus on
other things.
Yeah,
exactly.
Your significant other, which, it's the whole thing's about.
Exactly. And I think the other, I would say, time sucker is the fact that we're not decisive enough. Right? So there's a decision coming your way, like the florist is offering an extra bonus for another $1,000, which is so amazing. And we need to start asking questions and debate on it and the pros and cons. And we're wasting so much time and energy into trying to make a decision. When I work with couple, I really ensure that they have a vision. Not just a common vision for this wedding, but just a vision for their life, and that they're aware of what's important for each other. And so when they do that work up front, the decision-making becomes a lot easier because, well, they know. They've talked about the fact that if they had to go over budget, they would much rather do it over food than over flowers. So even if one of them come back like, honey, flowers, another $1,000, that looks beautiful, this, extra harsh or whatever. And your partner will be like, hey, babe, remember what we said about our priorities and what we value more in this wedding about food? And you're like, okay. Like, it's easier. Like, you have decided already what's important, what's not, what is the top priority, what's the value, what's the vision, and so the decision-making becomes easier. You waste less time and energy into trying to decide on things. So that to me is essential. And then being intentional. It's one thing to say, let's make sure we go on a date or whatever. Like, just put it down. Just decide, like, how are you doing it before, right?
Yes.
Like, were you just going with the flow? And if that's your style, good. If you are more planning on things, just don't let things unplanned. Just set time. Be like, hey, tonight, let's take 15 minutes. We'll turn off the TV instead of watching something silly, and we'll just chat, or we'll have a massage, or we'll do something that just connect us. But like, almost have it scheduled. Like, everyone knows at 8:35, this is what we're doing, right? And just really protecting these moments and creating something really for you and together, and without mentioning the wedding, and just like creating these pockets of time off duty.
That's the thing too, because as you said, you're adding in this project, and it really is a job. Planning a wedding, whether you have a planner or not, it is adding another full-time or part-time job, however you're dealing with this. And it does take precedence because there are time constraints. And as you said, so many decisions to be made, and things that pivot, things that come your way that you were not expecting, which is so common. And if people are going through it in their wedding, just know, like, you're not alone. This happens to everybody. But with that, we do lose sight of what's important. And our time management becomes, okay, well, I have to get this done for work, and then I have to get this done for the wedding. And then your partner is somehow third on the list now because you're valuing your work time and your wedding time more than that. So that's a really great tip too, just a tool to take away. And there are so many tools from everything that what you're saying, but that's really important to come back to. take some time to not talk about the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
The wedding is going to be a beautiful celebration. It's going to be a fun party. The wedding is not your marriage. The wedding is not your relationship. And, you know, it hurts me to say, but the wedding is not the most important thing. It's really not. And even though a lot is riding on it, there are high stakes because you've invested a lot in it and you do want to make people happy. It comes back to everything that you said. Those are just outside things. Those are kind of trivial things. Like what's at the core and how are we strengthening the core so that those things don't seem like such a big deal in the grand scheme.
Yes.
How early do you like to start working with your couples?
Frankly, at any point.
Really?
You could just start dating. I've had a client join on her own as she was starting her dating journey because she was feeling unsure that she could trust herself, actually. So yeah, at any point, quite frankly, the moment you feel like, oh, I wish I could have help, and we all have friends, right? And it's amazing. The challenge is having a friend who's not personally invested or doesn't bring a bias, right?
Yes.
And so that's the challenge. So when you have friends, you're like, yeah, but I like the advice, but then that's
they're too
a
invested because the nice thing about having you or a coach or someone third party in your life is, yes, of course you care about these people because that's just your nature and you're a good person and you want the best for these people. But at the end of the day, JL's your family. Your daughter's your family. That's your number one. That's your priority. So if a friend comes to me with an issue, I am so invested because I'm in it. They are my life. So whatever I'm going to tell them is kind of shaded by my perception, not really rooted in reality. Like I'm going to think my friends are the greatest things no matter what they do. But you are kind of there to say, hey, yeah, maybe you are the greatest thing, but there's something that we could work on to better you, to better your relationship, to strengthen your upcoming marriage. Like that is what we want at the end of the day.
Yes. I think there's a disclaimer I always give. As much as I want my client to love me, I'm not there for that.
Yeah.
And I'm there to serve them. So I'm going to be the person who will gently, but tell them what they need to hear, even if that's not that they want to hear. Right. And that's exactly what you're describing. We all have had friends where we're like, I wish I could tell him or her that, but it's going to hurt him so much or her so much. I don't want to just damage our relationship, so I won't, right?
Yes.
And that's great because that's what friends are for also sometimes, is to just be supportive and just let you go through whatever you're going through. But that's where I can come in and I will be honest. I'll be saying like, this is what you've been saying. This is what you've been doing. There's something here that we need to address and come to term with or decide on, right? So that's the difference that I can bring.
When you have to deliver a hard truth to someone, do they ever take it in a way that you're like, come on, everything we worked on?
So I've had actually two examples, one fairly recently. The one recently was a man, and he was very graceful in the delivery. Didn't say anything to me at all. And for him, he had chosen to record all our sessions, which I highly encourage because it's so powerful to return to watching you. How were you 3 weeks ago? Because that's how fast things can get.
Sure.
Or 3 months ago. And so we had recorded the session. And the following session, he came on and was like, this was really hard what you said last time. But I returned to the recording and man, were you right. And, and it's just like, whew, okay.
That feels good. I'm sure that feels so good.
It feels good.
To know that you're making a difference in his life.
And that they are open enough to just not stay on the bitterness of what I had to say.
Yes.
I try to always deliver it with a lot of love and compassion because that's who I am. So that I think that's why most of the time I don't get the I would say, nasty reaction on the spot.
Yeah.
But I had this client, a woman, who was getting very angry on our session, and same. She was, thankfully she was on a recorded session, and I'm proof to that. Like, I don't engage emotionally. Like, you start yelling at me, I'll be like, okay, let's understand, where does that anger come from? Because it's not me. Again, salt and wound. So it took her 2 or 3 sessions where she was angry, and then I kind of mentioned to her, like, again, how well did you sleep lately? Not really well. It's like, okay. What about your diet? You're so sensitive to your diet. It's like, well, I've been taking more coffee. And I was like, okay. And I just point out things. And she went away and she was like, oh my God. And she goes back and she was like, oh, I was so nasty. I was so this and that. And so that's it. It's just take, again, the willingness to look inwards.
Yes.
And I'm happy to be wrong.
Of course,
it's just like, but sometimes it's just like, you just said this and you just said that, and the two don't match. Like, how do we, where is the truth here for you? And they're like, oh, right. So if you're willing to just process what's happening, then typically those moments where I have to deliver, what I've sensed might be a bigger, deeper wound or challenge.
Yes.
They're willing to continue on the journey and figure out how do we get past this pattern of them or their problems.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow for most people to hear, like, I'm doing something that's maybe not in line with who I want to be, or maybe I'm in the wrong in a situation, whether that's with coach or with your partner, your fiance. But I think that when you accept that there's a possibility that you're wrong, there's an opportunity to learn something. And how exciting is that? Like, you should take every day to try to learn something new, whether it's about yourself or your partner. But being wrong is not a bad thing.
No.
Being wrong is a great thing. And if you have a professional, a third party there telling you, like, maybe not necessarily that you're wrong, but there are things that you can work on that, are not in line with who you want to be. I think, don't take offense to it. Like, embrace it and say, like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna work on myself. I'm gonna be better. It'll make you a better partner. It'll make you a better person. It'll just enhance your life in so many ways. So I want to kind of pivot a little bit. So you mentioned earlier your husband, JL, he's a photographer, and that's kind of how you got into this whole sphere, because you always had this deep within you, these skill sets. But his couples are where you started with this. So I believe you said he thought it might be like a great idea to assist some of his couples for photography, because, when you're planning a wedding, you kind of need that hand holding a little bit. So for some of the advice that you give them, I want to go into the actual self-confidence in terms of being in front of the camera. This is a question, Caroline, that I get so much from people. People feel so uncomfortable getting in front of a camera, and they're so scared for their wedding day / wedding weekend, because they feel like all eyes are going to be on them, and they have this lens in their face, and they're self-conscious about the way they're going to look and feel. Do you ever talk with your couples about that and prepping for actually getting in front of the camera?
Yes. And here's what I say to these people. First is, again, select a good photographer.
Yes.
A photographer you feel comfortable with, a photographer you trust, and who knows what they're doing, right? They will direct you, they will help you. They know that, the first 20 minutes or whatever, it's going to be warm up. They're prepped for it, and they will make you at ease. So to me, that's just an easy solution, an easy solve for that. The other thing is, being uncomfortable in front of a camera is a mental construct, because in a way, if you were to plan a date with your spouse, and so the date is, you go to this little place where you have brunch, you walk hand in hand to the place, then you laugh, together, and as you leave, you kiss and, whatever, like you have a date and you feel fine.
Yeah.
If you have the same experience, but there's a photographer, all of a sudden it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's completely and something that we have, again, deeper in ourselves that created some form of lack of self-confidence and no challenge with our own self-image.
Yes.
So one of the work I typically suggest is understanding, where does that come from?
Yeah.
I grew up, I had a pretty nice childhood, all things considered. But one day, my mom made a joke about my knees on a picture and started to draw something funny, like a funny shape. And everyone laughed, me included. It was funny. And this joke stayed in the family forever. Like, often when we were trying to get a laugh, that's what would come up. That created so much challenges for me, being bare legs, right? Like, today I have a shorter dress. I owe it to my husband again, who's like helped me regain confidence and be like, your legs are normal, Caroline. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with your knees. Right?
Yeah.
But just that is this little incident, in a way, that just stuck with me for so long. I mostly wear pants to this day because it was just a way to just cover my knees and that wouldn't be a problem. Right?
Yes.
So same for anyone. Like, we see magazine covers, we see, social media, we see all of these ideas and we make it mean something about our own appearance.
Yes.
And the moment you start, like, digging deeper and be like, maybe there's nothing wrong there, can help. So I think having more consciousness around this and really understanding, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And then to me also is like getting rid of all of these expectations and standards, right? Like, I posted this week about those couples who chooses something completely unconventional, not a white dress, a dress with flowers for their wedding, or do something that feels good to you, that make you feel good, or at least comfortable.
Right.
Because, it's one thing to getting a photo shoot. If you're like stuck in your dress or tuxedo is not comfortable, like, you're not going to be great. So just doing you. And even if it means you're a woman and you're wearing pants to your wedding, by the way, my solution, my option,
yes,
then so be it. But just, you want to feel comfortable in your own clothes, because then that just removes an extra layer of self-awareness and lack of confidence and all these mental things that ruminate in our minds when it comes to getting in front of the camera. So really, again, getting clear as to, what do you want to wear? What do you want to feel like? What do you want to look like? And just embrace it. And then the last tip, and because photographers would know that, but most photographers are not comfortable in front of the camama.
Isn't that interesting? Yes.
And so we've had many photo shoots together with JL over the years. And despite my own self-awareness around my knees and stuff like this, to me, it was a negative return on investment if we both felt a little stuck in our photo shoot, right? So to me, I made it a priority to help him feel more comfortable in front of the camera so that we have amazing memories, and we do.
Yeah.
And so if one of the two is more comfortable, or at least less anxious in front of the camera, I would advise them to support the other person. And so what I do when Jill and I get a photo shoot is I have a chat with him. Like, as we walk, we have a chat. We talk about something. I know the type of jokes that will make him laugh. And a good photographer doesn't hear what I'm saying often, but they know to be there and capture it.
Yeah.
And so we have amazing pictures of him smiling genuinely and being himself because of that. And so just because of a silly joke, I would have whispered in his ear or something. So if one of the two is more comfortable, and then that person has this amazing role to play in the photo shoot or when it's time to take pictures.
I really like that tip. Even if both are uncomfortable, going ahead of it into it, say, okay, let's think of some fun, who can make each other laugh? How can we giggle and enjoy this? And distract ourselves from the lens, because who cares that it's here? We're enjoying ourselves. That's third party. Like this is the fun part.
Yes.
That's just capturing us. But yeah, I think we all have things that we're self-conscious about, of course, but when you're having a conversation or enjoying time with your partner, you're not thinking about those things. So, don't think about it with the camera. A great photographer is going to get a good angle. It's going to get a bunch of different angles. You're bound to like some of these pictures.
Yes.
I promise you. You get a good photographer, you're going to like these pictures. But it's funny that you mentioned about the clothing too and feeling comfortable in what you're wearing. I had a bridal stylist, Gabrielle Hurwitz, come on. And I asked her, what are some elements of an outfit that are bridal? And she said, if you're a person getting married, that's bridal. That it doesn't matter. You have to be comfortable in what you're wearing. And it goes for not only what you're wearing, but who you're with and how you're behaving. You just like having that deep work that you really set in with people early on, it's going to help in ways that you couldn't even imagine, even in ways like getting in front of a camera for your wedding, because those little things, the trivial things that seem not to matter, they build up, but it's only because of these issues that went unresolved. So if we can build them from the core, you're not even going to have to worry about the common wedding stressors. You're going to be like a super wedding planner.
Yes. As you're saying, there's something else come to mind, which is this very weird love-hate relationship we have with fame. Right? Yeah. We all want the beautiful picture on social media, but there's part of us that feels, oh, that person must be full of themselves. Like there's something around, like it's weird to be willing to be in the spotlight and pose, and like there's something that we haven't really solved. And so I think also getting to the core of this and be like, being famous is great. Yeah. It's maybe not, you're not going to be at the cover of New York Times. That's okay, right? Like you're going to have the picture of you and your lover in your apartment on your walls, and that's great, right? Yes. But just resolving also this conflict that we have of like, oh, that would be great if I could be like this person and this person, but I don't know, being in front of the camera is not going to be okay because like, who am I? And then there's all this thing, and it's again completely a mental construct.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's almost like it's shameful to capture this celebratory moment where you're the center of attention, which, by the way, like it or not, a lot of people struggle with that. Oh, I don't want to be the center of attention. Yeah. Well, if you're having a wedding and you're inviting guests and you're not eloping, you are going to be the center of attention. But why is that an issue for you? I think that's the more important question, not whether or not you're going to be, but why? So what? You've invited these people who love you, who you love. Why is that so upsetting to you? Yes. So I think some people could really unpack things with you, Miss Caroline, and fix themselves before they get married. So, okay, this is so helpful. So something that we do here every episode, we do a little segment called premarital counseling. Yes. So our listeners will write in questions or concerns, and they just want a little bit of advice. And we always change the names. If anyone ever wants to write in, they can email. But I have a submission today that I would love your assistance with, if you would be so kind. So I'm going to read it. We're going to change the name. We're going to call her Jenna. She'll know it by the submission. So hello, Jenna. Okay. She says, hi, thank you for taking the time to read my submission. I'm having a wedding planning issue that I'm sure many people can relate to. My future mother-in-law, in my opinion, is very belittling and dismissive and making the wedding planning process very difficult for me to enjoy. She has a large hand in planning, as my future in-laws are contributing in large part to our wedding, I'm assuming financially. I am grateful for this, but my mother-in-law is treating this like it's her day and not giving my fiance or myself any real say. My fiance has spoken to her about it, and she brushes him off. The icing on the cake, no pun intended, was her cutting me off at our recent florist meeting and telling the entire room that I, quote, don't have a particular sense of style and should defer to her to any touches on my wedding because my future mother-in-law has been so controlling and callous with my feelings. I am not the type to make a fuss. I certainly don't want to ruin our relationship over wedding planning. How can I stand my ground and stand up to her without being confrontational? I've had a lot of mother-in-law submissions lately. I have a great mother-in-law. I love you, Lisa.
Well, I actually on that point before I answer Jenna, there's something to be said about the typical challenge of mother-in-law more than the father-in-law. I think generations ago we were getting married so young that we had to have our parents finance our weddings.
Yes.
I know my grandparents got married when they were 19 and 20, right?
Babies, yeah.
Yes. So the challenge with that is that generation after generation, you never got to have the wedding you wanted. And then you get the chance to finance the one of your kids, and you get to live your dreams that was never possible because your own mom planned your wedding the way she wanted it because she was paying for it. Right. And so until someone is willing to break this generational, challenge, then it's going to just reoccur one after the other. So I always try to see both sides as well. And I kind of empathize when you hadn't had a chance to leave your own wedding. I could see how tempted it is to just step in. And it's not, I want to believe that it's not conscious.
Yes.
It's more subconscious. We're like, oh, no, but you should do it this way, etc. And you get too involved.
Sure.
So that's a challenge that I sadly see very often.
Yeah, that is so tough, especially when, Jenna sounds like a lovely, lovely sweetheart. She doesn't want to piss mother-in-law off, which I commend because I know a lot of people who would be like, screw you, it's my wedding. Get out of here. But on one hand, there's a financial aspect of it. And I don't know what their financial world is like, but maybe they need that or maybe they don't. But I think you have to kind of ask yourself, what's more important, me making the decisions or this money? And meet somewhere in the middle. I mean, it sounds like they're trying to have this conversation with her. And I didn't think about it in this way until you brought it up, but you're right. She's not being receptive because she's had this vision probably since she was getting married of what her day was going to be. But I hope someone can send this to her. This is not her day. And, she is hosting in a sense, but when you're hosting an event, shouldn't you want to please the guests of honor? I think it's kind of important, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that's not really super helpful for Jenna, but I think the internal work, what would you say, Caroline, to her so that she can work on herself and then have this hard conversation?
Well, first of all, Jenna, whenever you listen to this episode, know that I'm sending you a big, warm, tight hug.
20
virtually.
seconds plus.
Yes, 20 seconds plus. Because you're going through something very challenging.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to it. So thank you for being brave enough to submit that your experience. There's a few things that I'm seeing. I agree. Like we can sense how loving and caring she is. And these are amazing qualities to have.
Yeah.
And all great qualities have a dark side that she is mentioning. Avoiding conflict, right? Clearly to what I'm sensing, people pleasing, we don't, right?
Yes.
And so that is coming in the way, and that's letting her room to her mother-in-law to just walk all over her right now.
Right.
To the point of that criticism that I want to address first. But before I do that, the other thing that you're saying about her mother-in-law is that she seems to be clearly in need of control and to be in a position of power.
Uh-huh.
You don't butt power with power, right? So that's why you're saying if you're like, screw you, you're going to get into a fight. No one's going to be happy in the end. You're going to get what you want, but deep inside, nothing, the relationship will be damaged forever, probably.
Sure.
So, that's her need. That's her mother-in-law unmet need. It's not her day. And it's probably deep inside a wound of hers that's coming back here.
Yeah.
The other thing I sense in Jenna is she's brave. Like she's not staying in her problem. She's trying things. She reached out to you, and
She
for
had
help.
her fiance try to talk to
Yes,
mom.
yes. Fiance probably never got through mom anyway.
Probably, yeah.
So yes.
She tried, but it's, it's tough.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that you said don't fight power with power, because we hear a lot like, you don't fight fire with fire, but when you're in the moment and someone is like kind of coming for something that you are looking forward to or dreaming of, it's like,
yes,
how do we stop them in their tracks? But it sounds like you're saying like have a little bit of sympathy for mom a little bit.
It's important. I want to share a tool with Jenna, but before I do that, I really want to address the criticism.
Yeah.
We tend to criticize in others what we actually don't like about ourselves. And on occasion, I have people like, no, that's the fact that she's criticizing your sense of style, to me, seems like she herself has some form of complex around her sense of style. So she probably has got really good at hiding her lack of confidence around her own sense of style.
Yes.
So now it feels like she's like very confident. But the truth is, she wouldn't be criticizing if she was really at peace with her own style. So, Jenna, this criticism, any criticism that comes from her or anyone, has absolutely nothing to do with you or your sense of style. And that's the thing that I really want to land.
Yeah.
There
was a mean comment, but I'm glad you put it that way, because I was like, this woman is... see you next Tuesday. And maybe she's not. She's, she has the deep wound also.
Yeah, yes. And so a parallel, an analogy I want to give, and maybe it will help Jenna or any other person whenever they're facing some criticism, is it, you look beautiful today, Adriana. And let's imagine that we finish this recording and David comes to you and like, oh my God, I'm so glad this is over. Adriana, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I really don't think purple as a hair color fits you really well. Right? And so you would be, so maybe for a minute you'll be like, wait, what? You'll purple? My hair? Right? You'll check in the mirror and you'll see that you're perfectly blonde. And so your next thought is going to be like, David, are you okay? Do you feel like you're feeling like, is there something going on? Like, right? Just checking that everything is normal, right? And so that's how you want to experience criticism, especially when it's that low, right?
Yes,
like
just being so sure of yourself.
Yes, being so sure that your hair is not purple and your sense of style is great. Right? So I refer to this with my clients as the purple hair analogy. Like, go back to purple hair. When something like this happened, like, think about it as like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
And so then you can decide to show compassion because you appreciate David and you just want to make sure he's okay.
Sure.
You can be in a situation where you don't really know the person. Someone like randomly in the street said that, like, okay, have a great day. Thank you so much for sharing. And you just go on with your life, right?
Yeah.
In this scenario, if Jenna could go back in time, one thing I would say is, as her mother-in-law said that publicly, don't react to your mother-in-law publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Take her aside. Just give her the grace that she hasn't given you. And be like, hey, what's going on? Or, was that really necessary? Or is it really what you think?
Yeah.
Or just something, but just not engaging, not being defensive or reacting to the comment itself, but more addressing it, not letting it fly, because then, now we've created a precedent where it's okay to be criticized publicly.
Right.
And that's not good for the relationship in general. So that, to me, like, before I gave the actual tool to really support Jenna moving forward, is really detaching herself emotionally from criticism, especially now she knows that mother-in-law is going to be capable of doing something like this.
Sure.
Right? The best tool that I would advise Jenna to use is a nonviolent communication framework. So ultimately, nonviolent communication, you can Google it. There's a million examples and tools, etc. But essentially, it's how to have a conversation with someone, removing the feelings and emotion and blame. And so what you want to do is take her aside. Like you don't want to do this publicly or any sort, and you want to do this from a place of real as calm as you can. I would also say I would advise you to write it down, learn it by heart, rehearse it, and then deliver it. So I know it feels like it is quite some time, but I think finding a way to create a solid relationship with your mother-in-law while having your way on your own wedding just requires some preparation.
Yes.
Nonviolent communication, basically start with stating your observation. So they should be without any judgment, without any blame, without any feeling. So in this case, it would be something like, hey, mother-in-law, you ask her if she has time for a few questions, for a quick conversation. I mean, like, here's what I've observed. You're very invested in the wedding planning. And you've also recently made a comment about my sense of style in our florist meeting. And how things are going are not conducive to my well-being and me enjoying the process of my wedding planning. So that's the first step, like just observation. This is this. The second step is you state your feelings. And your feelings are indisputable.
Yeah.
No one can say that's your feeling. So you get to say, I feel criticized, I feel belittled, I feel dismissed. The third step is expressing your need. And you would say something like, because what I really want is to have a beautiful wedding that looks like me and your son, where the full preparation would have bring us all closer together, including you, mother-in-law, right? And the fourth step is an invitation, and saying something like, hey, would you be willing to explore new ways of preparing for this wedding that would, do what I'm needing this to be doing? Would you like that? How would you be free on Sunday? Maybe me and your son can meet over lunch and just discuss how we could do things a little differently, right? This way, there's no blame, there's no judgment, there's no attack. Because if you attack, she's going to be defensive.
Right.
From there, well, first of all, mother-in-law might interrupt. Be like, well, but, I have to step in because the vendor you've selected are this or that or whatever. Or you do not have a sense of style, whatever. If mother-in-law interrupts that script, you let her finish. You do not pay attention to anything she's saying. When she's done, you say, hey, I would love to get through to my point without being interrupted. Is that possible? Right? I was like, great. All right. So I was saying, and you continue where you left off.
Yes.
And you do that as many times as you need if she interrupts. And at the end, mother-in-law has two options. She can be defensive and be like, well, your feelings are stupid. And, I didn't say that. I didn't do that. So that's her choice. Don't react. Same. Let her finish and be like, okay, are you saying that you are not willing to try to do things differently and meet, your son and I to find a different way? Is that what you're saying? Hopefully the answer is like, no, that's not what I'm saying, right? If the answer is yes, I would really reconsider how I do my wedding and find a different way to fund it.
Yeah.
Because that will say a lot about mother-in-law. But hopefully she says yes, and then we can calm down and just move. Like, okay, so if you're willing, let's set a date and let's talk about how we do things. Or she's wise and she takes it and she's like, okay. And the moment she says okay, also because it feels like she needs to feel important, I would say something in the line of, if it feels right, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. This means so much to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just having these conversations. So at this point, Jenna has really two options. It's either she kind of suck it up and stay in her loving, caring self, which means she's going to have to go her way and suck it up and probably not have the wedding she wants, or just fight a little bit here and there to get a few things, but it doesn't going to feel right.
Yeah.
or she can step into a brave side that posted this question today, and still lean into her loving self and have such a conversation.
Because she was so kind, even with her submission. It was never any
yes.
ill speak.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think what's important is you're going to set a precedent. Again, we've let that criticism fly. So subconsciously, mother-in-law is okay criticizing, which is completely fine. But if Jenna was to choose to just continue the course, mother-in-law thinks she has a bad sense of style. Wait until you want to buy a house. She's going to come and decorate it. She might even choose a house for you guys. Right? The moment you have a kid, she might throw the clothes you bought for baby away because they're not quote unquote nice enough, and she's buying new one.
Right.
Where every time you're going to cut your hair, she's going to be like, "You've cut your hair," and not "Oh my God, this is amazing," right? Or like it fits you, or "I actually don't like it, but I'm glad you like it." You just want to set a different dynamic and a different precedent, because you're letting her, a free pass, and she's going to use it every time because she knows you won't react. So creating the habit of nonviolent communication was in situations like this, you'll have to do it once, twice, maybe 3 times until she's like, okay, with Jenna, I can't. I have to just not criticize. I have to be better behaved. I cannot. She's not going to let me decorate their house. So I just have to find my own way to deal with it, but not getting at Jenna.
Yeah, it sounds like she knows what she has to do now. And thank God you're here today, Caroline, because I feel like this was a little bit of a heavier submission than what we typically have. And usually, if it were me, I'd be like, get her, Jenna. But that was such smart and great advice. And it's something that I'll even take with me, I think anyone who is in similar shoes or dealing with really any kind of pressure, they can sit with what you've said and kind of stick to a script and get through this with grace and not really change themselves, but be their own advocate and stand up for themselves. So I thank you so much for sharing that. That was so beyond helpful. So much better than what I could have given. Okay. We do also every episode, we end with something called an after party. And we just go through these like fun little wedding questions. So not necessarily related to your expertise, but more in the wedding realm. Before we get there, I just want to thank you again so much for being so open and sharing so much of what you do, because we have a lot of different people on and I love all of our guests, but this really went deep and it really made me think on another level about the way in which I behave. So I'm going to look inward. I really am. And, I'll give you another opportunity to promote Bliss and everything like that. But if anyone is interested in getting in touch with Caroline, she's clearly phenomenal. And are you taking on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, amazing. So we'll finish up with that. But before we do, let's get to our after party. Now for my favorite part of the show, the after party. This is where I ask my guests rapid fire questions about their upcoming weddings, starting with honeymoon hotspots, brought to you by Honey Fund, the #1 honeymoon and cash registry. Listeners of the Pre Nup get $25 added to their account when they register at honeyfund.com/prenup. Okay, on to the after party. Caroline, what is your top honeymoon destination recommendation?
I would love to go to the combo of Reunion and Mauritius Island, which are a sister's island in the Indian Ocean. And I am doing kind of some sort of self-promotion because I was born and raised in Reunion. And I really think that this is this extraordinary piece of land that would deserve to be better known.
Okay.
And Reunion is a volcanic island, and there is no people originally from Reunion. It was mainly boats from the Indies route that was coming through. Eventually, people settled there, and so it's a true melting pot. Like you see cultures who have melted together, whose religion is a mix of things that makes no sense to any other person, but to people from there. The cooking, everything is a mix of so many different cultures together. So I love going back, and I love making people discover reunion.
Oh, it sounds fabulous. I don't even know about it. Okay, yes. Let's get this on the list.
I would say the part that's missing to reunion is fabulous landscape, but the beach is not safe anymore with lots of sharks in the water. But the sister island of Reunion, which is probably a 15-minute flight in between both, is Mauritius. And Mauritius has these amazing beaches. The quality of service. People from Mauritius are the kindest, most devoted people you can ever come to meet. They have a great sense of service, and their resorts are absolutely stunning. So I would say start with Reunion, get your treks and cultural mix in, and finish with a couple of days in a beautiful resort, just taking the beauty of Mauritius in.
It sounds wonderful. And that was a first for sure. Okay, we're adding it to the list. All right, Caroline, what is your dream wedding cake flavor?
Flavor will always be mango. I'm a mango girl. And I a mango pavlova would be like the cake.
Oh, so my stomach is like rumbling right now. Okay. One song that's going to get you on the dance floor at a wedding.
What song will not get me on a dance floor?
That's a better question. Oh my God, I love it.
I would, frankly, like any music will make me dance. Yeah. But I love the energy of J-Lo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
J-Lo's,
Like,
God, forever.
Yes.
She's so good. I don't care. They could never make me hate J-Lo. And I feel like they're trying right now. It's not going to work. I will love her forever. So good. Okay. If you could invite one living dream guest to your wedding, who would you invite?
It's not going to be a very sexy answer. But I would invite Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins, that's a great one.
I love his ability to sense the room and bring an amazing energy to any place he goes to. And he would be someone that JL could connect with as well. Yes. So that would be very important to me, of having someone who could just, give a different vibe, a different energy to the room, almost on command, that would resonate with both of us.
That's such a sweet and generous answer. You're like the female Tony Robbins, I feel like. You are. Okay, and then last question I have for you today, before we wrap up, is what is one piece of practical advice that you could impart to any couple planning a wedding?
I don't know how practical this is, but to me, it always going back to trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just trust yourself.
Yeah.
But again, if you had to be practical, I'll say sleep.
Yes, get your sleep.
Get your sleep.
But I mean, the first one's probably more important, but the sleep is huge. And so many people lose it during wedding planning. Caroline, this was so fabulous. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Where can everyone find you and Bliss and JL, the whole nine?
Well, initially we integrated Bliss into JL's business. Yes. So you can find my page on blissbycaroline.com. You will land on JL's website with a landing page dedicated to Bliss. But we've made the decision not too long ago, actually, to expand my offering beyond his services.
Congratulations.
So even if you are not working with him, although you should, in my opinion, you can get in touch. And there's like a lot of information about what I do, a way to get in touch.
Amazing.
Yes.
Caroline, thank you again. This was so wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the Pre Nup.
This episode is brought to you by Olive & June. Break up with your salon and visit oliveandjune.com to try the easiest, most cost-effective way to get salon quality nails at home.
Follow at @the_pre_nup and at Love Stories TV on Instagram for more. Have feedback or suggestions for the next episode? Feel free to reach out to us at podcasts@lovestoriestv.com.